Hi, my name is Pouyan Darian. I'm the principal attorney here at Darian Immigration Law. And today I want to discuss a very serious topic with you. Will separation or divorce from my U.S. citizen spouse result in deportation or otherwise affect my immigration proceedings? There are two camps. There are two different topics I would like to discuss in this regard. The first is where the immigrant spouse received their permanent residence through the U.S. citizen and it's conditional. What that means is they only receive their green card for 2 years and then they have to apply, they have to file a form I-751 petition to remove conditions, to remove the conditions on their permanent residence and become full permanent resident status. That's one situation. The other situation is where the person already has full permanent residence, and in that case, if the green card is a 10-year green card, you have nothing to worry about. You can divorce your spouse, you could separate, it will have no impact whatsoever. But let's go back to the first situation because I have a feeling that's why you're watching this video. Now, you're in a situation where you are dependent on this U.S. citizen spouse for your immigration status. You married in good faith and things didn't work out. Now you have your conditional permanent residence, or you're even waiting for your conditional permanent residence, and the marriage is not working out. What do? There's a few different pieces of advice I'd like to give in this regard, but the main point that I would like to make is it's okay to feel scared right now. This is a panic situation where your life could either result in permanent residence or deportation from the United States. So I completely understand that you're freaking out. It's normal. I see this all the time. And you're freaking out for very good reason because this may result in deportation proceedings. That's the bad news. The good news is it's all fixable in certain situations. And that's what I want to discuss today. Let's look at a situation where you, the immigrant spouse, have your conditional permanent residence, but things with your U.S. citizen spouse just aren't working out. You're having your ups and downs like any normal relationship, but you're having more downs than ups, and you're not sure if this is going to be a viable marriage in the long term. When you first entered into the marriage, it was completely good faith. You didn't do it for an immigration benefit. You did it because presumably you were in love and wanted to marry this person. But now things have changed, situations have changed, time has passed, several years possibly have passed, and things aren't working out, and you're fairly certain you're going to divorce at some point. But you don't want to divorce because you're afraid. You're afraid that it will affect your immigration status. You don't have to be afraid. The fear is very useful because it will cause you to act and be cautious, but the fear is not necessary. We can fix this. The key here is that you entered the marriage in good faith. Don't hang on to a dying marriage just to remove the conditions on your permanent residence. You have your 2-year green card. You know you have to file a petition jointly with your U.S. citizen spouse to remove the conditions in the future, so you don't want to divorce at this point. The problem with that is when you go at the end of the process to an interview to remove the conditions, or when you submit additional evidence, the evidence is going to be super weak because your marriage is falling apart. You may not even have photographs at holiday events or family gatherings because the two spouses, you and your spouse, are just so far apart at this point. You may not even be living together. I see this all the time. And clients come in and they tell me, well, my US citizen spouse is living with his family and I am living with my friend, but he or she agreed to go to the interview with me to remove the conditions. That's a mistake. I would not fake any relationship for an immigration benefit. At that point, if the marriage is completely irretrievable, it's broken down to the point where you cannot fix it, file for divorce. That is what I would wholeheartedly recommend. This isn't legal advice, but that's what I recommend to the majority of my clients in that situation. If you stay in an abusive relationship or in a marriage where you're just completely unhappy, you may make things much worse for yourself at the end of the process because you won't have sufficient evidence and you won't be able to submit enough evidence that you've continued to reside with your spouse, that you've continued to share your assets, your lives together, your plans for family in the future. Everything will be inconsistent. At the same time, I know this is a nightmare situation. I know you're scared, you're panicking, you may even be feeling embarrassed. Don't. Speak with a lawyer. Bring all the evidence you have that your marriage is real and continue to save evidence. Text messages back and forth, even, cursing and fighting back and forth is very valuable evidence at this point in the process. That's the evidence we're going to need to submit when we want to remove the conditions to show that the marriage was real in the beginning. Because after all, if this was a fake marriage where the immigrant spouse paid the US citizen money to fake a marriage, to get a green card, why would you guys be fighting? Why would emotion even be involved? The fact that you're fighting is very relevant. It's very important. So one piece of advice I always give is save your text messages. Take screenshots, email them to yourself before you lose your phone. I see it happen all the time where someone had evidence and then either they moved out and didn't bring the evidence with them, or they lost their phone, and now they have no evidence to show that the marriage was real in the beginning. If we can show that your marriage was real from its inception, we can have your conditions removed even if you are separated or divorced from your spouse. So, I have a lot of cases where people ended up in deportation proceedings because they failed to properly file the I-751 petition to remove conditions, or they didn't sufficiently respond to requests for evidence, or they kept their marriage going just for the sake of removing the conditions. That was a mistake, but possibly fixable depending on the facts of the case. At this stage, panic is normal because nobody wants a permanent deportation order, being separated from their family and friends forever. But the good news is this is fixable. I have a lot of cases like this, and we've had a fair amount of success where the marriage was real from the beginning. And that's really the key to all of this. The marriage had to have been real from the beginning. So what you do from the moment you know you're going to divorce is you continue to save evidence and you immediately contact an immigration lawyer before you even discuss it with your spouse, honestly. That's not legal advice, that's just something I'd like to add to this video. I would speak with an immigration lawyer before you even tell your spouse you're going to divorce them. If that ship has sailed and you've already begun the divorce proceedings, finalize it as soon as possible. If you work with an experienced immigration attorney who's dealt with these matters, who has experience with permanent residents removing the conditions and specifically deportation proceedings, because that is very well where this may end up, this is a completely fixable situation. Yes, we may have to go to court once or twice in front of an immigration judge, or even more, but eventually we can fix this situation if the marriage was real from the beginning, and we are able to convince or persuade an officer or immigration judge that it was real from the beginning. Look, be honest to yourself. if this marriage is salvageable, do the best you can. Marriage therapy, whatever. But if you are 100% certain that this marriage will eventually result in divorce, meet with an immigration lawyer who has experience in these matters immediately. Give us a call today, 914-885-3961, or just shoot us a text. You can even email us, contact@darianlaw.com. You want an attorney who has substantial experience with permanent residence, removing the conditions, citizenship, and deportation proceedings, because all of that could be mixed into one in these types of cases. I'm here for you. When we meet, we're going to create a plan of attack, and all this stress and anxiety, panic and fear that you have will be converted into confidence. That's what my job is, to help people who have a right to live in the US live in the US. So please, give us a call or call your local trusted immigration lawyer. It doesn't matter if it's us, but just so you know, we do have clients all over the country. I do video consultations, telephone consultations, and I am very available for my clients.